our afternoon session, the most challenging session probably, like right after lunch. So still bring some energy, but we have a great panel. We are attempting to break our record for the most people we've ever had on a panel at one time with this panel. The most experts in computer science is what we actually have here. So this panel actually gives a great opportunity to bridge what was talked about in the Spaces video that was just shown. What you all are experiencing in the playground, the digital playground, what's experienced at Bush Hill STEAM Academy is one of the ways that as an organization, we're bringing computer science and technology into the classroom. Here to share with us are some experts in that space who are thought leaders in computer science, education technology, as well as just overall digital skills and how that applies to the workforce itself. So I am going to let each of them introduce themselves and talk a little bit, tell their company, who they're with, and actually why they do this work. And so we're going to start. We'll start from this end. We'll start with Mr. Curran.
All right, cool. Can everybody hear me? All right, great. So my name's Kerwin Rent. I'm the founder of Elite Gaming Live. We are a fusion of esports and STEM education. I've been working with schools for about 12 years now, and we work with over 200 schools around the US. And this work is super important because my background's in technology, and I worked on tech teams in Fortune 500 companies, and usually I was the only minority on the team, and especially there weren't any women. So when I looked at my K through 12 experience, I just realized there was an opportunity to get kids exposed so that these teams could start to look different in the future. So.
Thanks, Kerwin.
Yep.
We'll pass it to Dominique next, but before that, we want to give a shout out to all the noobs in the building. So we'll give a shout out to Dominique, the cameraman over there. We'll give a shout out to all of the Divine Nine in the building as well.
All right, good afternoon. My name's Dominic Sanders. I'm the Computer Science State Supervisor for the South Carolina Department of Education. This work is very important to me because I believe in disrupting the education space through technology.
Awesome. Alan?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan Antoine, and I am the Director for Computer Science Education Strategy at the University of Texas at Austin's Advanced Computing Center with the Expanding Pathways in Computing team. And before that, I was at Rice University for a lot of years, doing a lot of the same work, teacher preparation, and a lot of just kind of advocacy work to talk about why we need diverse people in these spaces in computing, because it's not taking over, it's already here, so definitely.
Awesome. Hassan?
Hey everyone, can y'all hear me? Yes? Okay. Hassan Brown, CEO of CareerCatalyst.org. We are a STEAM education career exploration platform, and we fuse together storytelling, social emotional learning, and CTE, career technical education. And why this work is important is because, 100 plus years ago, we found ourselves smack in the middle of like the industrial era, right? Many people made their money off of their wealth off of that period through entrepreneurship and business. And now we find ourselves in the information and data age. And many of the people who made their wealth 100 years ago didn't look like most of the people in this room. And so with Career Catalyst, we're bringing career exploration to underrepresented, underestimated communities. And the power there is that they'll have the power of agency, the power of choice to know about the jobs of today and have the 21st century skills for tomorrow.
Awesome. Allison?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allison Scott. I'm the CEO of the KPOR Foundation. We work at the intersection of racial justice and technology. We're based in Oakland, California. This is actually my first visit to Alabama, so super happy to be here. Thank you. And we are focused on creating more diverse and inclusive tech ecosystems, and we care about every stage of the pipeline, from K-12 computer science education all the way to entrepreneurship and venture capital. And excited to be here, and I get to work with my lovely colleague, Shayna White.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shayna V. White. This is my boss, so that's why I'm here. It's a standing joke with the company. I use the Marshawn Lynch line. I'm just here so I don't get fined. So that is the case. I am a former classroom teacher for 16 years in the Metro Atlanta area, and got recruited to join Dr. Scott at the K-4 Center to work a lot on CS equity and justice in a K-12 classrooms.
Yeah, so awesome. Thank all of you for being here. And before I go any further, I don't know what the other panels will look like, but I am going to say that this is the dope shoe panel. Check it out, everybody. Yeah, the boots and this panel has a lot of flair and flavor in their shoes, so I like that. But yeah, so thank y'all for telling us a little bit about why CS is important to you all and the work that y'all do. At Ed Farm, a big part of what we started out even in thinking about the work that we were doing was this intersection of entrepreneurship, ed tech, and then how can teachers sit a little bit at the center of that and influencing ed tech platforms that they come to life. And some of the things that we've actually learned is that oftentimes the innovative tools that ed tech companies and the things that really stress computer science and get kids aware of that don't ever make it into the classroom. It's those things that you have to have that make it into the school system. So I want everybody to kind of keep that in mind as we get to a question phase to kind of hear from them and how they got on some of their journeys. But what I will start with is, how can we ensure equitable access to computer science education for all students? For all students, regardless of location, zip code, any of those things. Talk a little bit about how that's happening. And I'm gonna directly pivot and start with Allison.
Okay. So we've been doing this work for about the last decade, and I think what we've seen is there's been great interest, an increased interest in computer science, but we still lack access to computer science across the country, and specifically in schools with students that look like us and low-income schools. So first, we have to ensure that all students have access to computer science courses. One of the ways to make that happen is working at the state level, which these gentlemen will talk about state level policy, local policy as well. But a couple key areas that we are very interested in. One is how do we prepare the educator workforce? How do we support our teachers to be able to teach in a culturally responsive way to inspire all students to pursue computer science? How do we ensure the curriculum is actually interesting and engaging and not just teaching students how to code and how to potentially be software engineers? Like, computer science is much more robust and broad. And then finally, which several folks on this panel can talk more about, how do we inspire our young people to understand what computer science is and why it matters for any future, any career that they might want to pursue?
So I'm gonna ask you this, and then we'll jump next to the state piece. What's working? You say y'all have been doing this for 10 years. Like, what, from you all's perspective, from the K-4 perspective, philanthropically providing, funds to spur investments and things in computer science and ed tech, what's working to actually do that? Or what have you all seen that's working?
Sure. Just a couple points that I think are working. One, I think you can't overstate the critical importance of having diverse representation on teams, like at the state level, overseeing computer science education policy. So I think policies being passed is critically important. The other piece is leadership at the local level. So a lot of amazing leaders who have been really critical, some of the folks Shayna's worked with, some of the folks in this room who have actually helped to transform opportunities in those schools and in those districts. So we need to invest in those leaders in a sustainable way. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is kind of some really awesome bright spots will expand computer science and have a wonderful momentum, and all of a sudden that person will leave and we're back to square one. So I think a lot of sustainable investment in supporting leaders.
Yeah, jump into the state piece, Dominique and Alan. What from you all's end, needs to be in place to ensure equitable access is occurring at the state level?
So in South Carolina, we are one of the few states that do have that graduation requirement. So that has been a big help. But in my role, I've been very strategic on making sure that we have an ample amount of resources. And those resources are making sure that they are going to the underrepresented populations and making sure that when we are going into those districts, not only are we training the teachers, but we're training the administrators. We're working with the superintendents to making sure, to speak to Allison's point, that that ecosystem is strong and is sustainable.
Texas?
Well, in Texas, something that we've done recently is really kind of leaned in on this idea of the CAPE framework, where we talk about this, how equity looks in a computing pathways, right? The capacity to teach it, who's having access, how the participation looks, and what's their experience looking like. And really kind of leaning in, we've done things with state dashboards, where we've made the data really available for educators and for district level organizations or state level orgs to find out who's actually in the courses, who's doing what, who can teach the courses. And once that data's there, it's a lot easier to have those conversations and to really make substantive change in that way.
Yeah. And Kerwin, from your perspective, from being, you mentioned about your opportunities in corporate America and the things that you're doing now to actually grow, build, and scale a company. What do you see as someone now who is helping kids learn technology through gaming, but in your position having built a company around that, like what do you think needs to be at the center of making sure that equity is provided for everyone to learn computer science?
Yeah, I would say that probably the primary thing is kind of a shift at the ground level for teachers. Like teachers have more freedom to teach in the classroom how they'd like to teach, bring in new ideas, because the reality is most kids have access to a device. And an iPhone is really powerful, right? Or an iPad is really powerful, even one that's 2-3 years old. So you could do a whole lot with all these devices outside of even what I represent, which is like gaming. But teachers just need more leeway to be creative in the classroom and kind of get out of kids' ways, because they're typically way smarter than we give them credit for. And they're learning a lot outside of school. And, schools need to kind of figure out where they sit in those spaces, which, social media, schools should be super active over there because that's where the kids are at. And the kids, if schools knew what kids were doing in these spaces, they would probably naturally shift the classrooms to go towards that anyway. So I would say I think that's the biggest thing, because kids have that access already typically. And then beyond that, I would say, after school should be a priority. Bringing parents closer to school should be a massive priority. I mean, that's kind of the biggest piece is parents need to gravitate back towards the school, and teachers, principals, admin should have a budget specifically to engage parents.
Y'all like that? Yeah. Yeah. I'll just turn to the crowd for a second before we go back that way with the group. But what are, we mentioned, what are some of the things that you all feel like y'all need in order to make sure that equitable computer science access is able to be provided in the schools and to students? What are some of those things that might not have surfaced through their comments that you all think that y'all need? Oh.
It's time to get it done.
Time to get it done? Oh, yes, keep going. I'm sorry.
No,
I was just echoing like Diddy behind you on you. No, yeah. Anything else? Training? Yeah. For students or for the educators? Students. And so Candace just used the words, just basic digital skills, digital literacy, digital fluency is a huge gap, and we know that. Anything else? So, yes.
Making it more intentionally a part of the curriculum and not just an option, making it cross-curricular
Awesome. Last one. We'll come back to.
We go through PDs constantly, learning how the brain learns. And at the end of it, the way that it stays in their long-term memory is if they can create something with it. And these platforms allow them to create something. And it seems like we go through these PDs, and then when it comes to this, they still want pen and paper.
Paper, do it.
And it doesn't stick with them. So, but it's scientific fact. If they can create something with what they're learning, it stays with them.
So Hassan,
Sir.
career catalyst.
Yes.
With many of the things that these educators mentioned as far as some of the resources that they need, and in particular a couple who talked about credentialing for students, training, how does Career Catalyst and other ed tech platforms that's similar, how are they positioned to help solve that equity space of computer science and prepare these students for what lies ahead?
Yeah, so I wanted to say thank you for all of those candid feedback there. As a former classroom teacher, that tracks 110%, right? With Career Catalyst, something that we've done is we have several use cases. It's built to be very adaptable and flexible. So we have a self-directed track so that students can actually, they get up in the morning, they're brushing their teeth, they pop in their AirPods, they can listen to a Career Catalyst episode, podcast, engage in a fireside chat, right? But for some schools that have the capacity, we have opportunities for, we have lesson plans also that come with the platform. Whether you're a 19-year-old youth program counselor or a 20-year vet, the content is meant to be very accessible and digestible to you. To your point, ma'am, it's very accessible. Whether you have a tech acumen or not, we got you. It's been built with that in mind. And then the project-based learning piece, right? We provide storytelling narratives and SEL, but we also give people the students a chance to create something, and not just create something independently or individually. They have to work with the person next to them, right? So communication skills, right? Collaboration, all those 21st century skills that are just as valuable in the STEAM workforce. We embody all of those things, and also just meeting kids where they're at, which is something that Kerwin and I think, do really well. Kerwin has Elite Gaming Live, which is bringing esports. Esports kids are out here making bank, Twitch, YouTube, these championships, they're making money, right? And kids want to know, okay, if I pursue this job, how much am I going to make? Career Catalyst, we solve that by providing that information for them. Give the kids the chance to play these games, man, right? And I know devices are often frowned upon in classrooms. I'm like, bruh, they're going to be on these devices anyway. So we use media as the delivery mechanism for storytelling, right? So it's kind of honoring what it's like to be a kid in the year 2023 versus 2003, 1993. Things were different then. Technologies have advanced way beyond our understanding. Policy has not kept up. Implementation has not kept up. But the kids, they've kept up, right? And so, Chat GPT and all that AI, that we all. Right, I'm speaking to the crowd here, to the chorus here, but that's kind of how I think Career Catalyst positioned itself to kind of meet young people where they're at, and EGL as well. It's really just bringing fun to kids, because they'll kind of find ways to learn whether they have a formal teacher in front of them or not. Learning doesn't only happen in the classroom.
Yeah. Are y'all aren't using Chat GPT and generative AI to what's the word?
Write your papers.
To grade papers. Are y'all using it to write papers for PhDs and master's classes?
Oh, yeah.
They should be, though. They should be, yeah.
Yeah, we know that technology is really moving fast, and so a part of what you get the opportunity with panels like this and organizations like ours. How do we position students to be at the front of being the creators of that, but then also how do you position educators to be at the front of either using that or knowing what's occurring in their classrooms with that as well. So let's talk about equity and justice. Shanna, The point that this educator made at this table right here when she mentioned that students that are coming in oftentimes don't know, they don't have the digital fluency or the digital literacy for the computer. And then oftentimes we find that just digital skills, lack of digital skills, it's unequitable, especially when you start thinking about location, rural, then when you start getting into urban and by demographics, persons of color. How does the work that you're doing and the work that you're doing with Kapoor really seek to address that through equity and a justice lens for computer science?
As a former teacher, all the things that y'all said were true. And for me, I feel like my role at the Kapoor Center is to kind of nullify all of those or mitigate all those issues that are problems. So one of the ways that I do that is we have a partnership with 7 schools in Georgia. One cluster is in rural Georgia, southwest Georgia near Dothan, Alabama. And basically I go in and I coach the teachers. I go meet the students. I go meet the superintendent. I go meet the caregivers and the family members, and I become a part of their community. So the teachers know, hi, I don't know how this tool works, or my kids want to do VR. It's my job to help facilitate so that their kids can do VR, and I take all the barriers out of the way. And so we're doing this pilot kind of partnership with these school districts just to see if having a person that is high touch, that can help the community see the value in CS and help the teachers see the value in CS and administration, because everybody's got to be on the same page, is really, really key to kind of bring forth this equity piece and this justice-centered computer science education. And the other thing is, a lot of times, I know from my experience, as a teacher, I felt like my job was to find out what my kids were interested in, and I'm the teacher, so my job is to make it match the standards. And so a lot of times we don't ask kids because we're in such a standardized, which should be abolished, but that's just me. Standardized testing needs to go yeet itself into the sun, but I know it's not going to. But understanding that when we ask our kids what they're interested in, they automatically become engaged in the class because they see that you've taken an effort to help build community and include them in your classroom. And I think that's a huge thing that teachers don't necessarily have the time, as you mentioned before, to do. And so trying to help teachers realize small community building steps that you can do at the beginning of the school year, throughout the school year, check-in times. Literally, I used to have a thing called a mindfulness moment, and the kids got 10 minutes to do whatever they needed to do. If it was homework for another class, if it was put their head on a desk, whatever, but everybody after the mindfulness moment were all centered and ready to work in my classroom. So understanding what your students need and doing that is how you seek equity in classrooms and how you seek justice in classrooms for underrepresented groups.
Awesome. That's amazing examples of how this work can actually be executed on in the classroom. So a big part of, let's say computer science, when you start thinking about it from an industry or workforce perspective, when EdFarm got its founding to start, we decided on this path. One of the things that we talked about when we were pitching this, with Apple, it was that everyone can code. And when we, really thought about everyone can code, it wasn't that we were saying that we wanted everyone to come out and be a developer or something like that, but it's literally those transferable skills that are gained through this idea of computer science and through coding. What does that mean? Every employer that you talk to is going to tell you that, hey, we want someone who can critically think, who can problem solve, who can work together in a team, who knows how to, get from point A to point B. And so we kind of pitched this idea of, access to computer science and doing those skills that you continue to work through project-based learning is a way of getting there. Are there things that you all are doing with industry that's helping to influence how computer science is then adopted either in schools or making it easier for computer science to be leveraged and taught in schools now? We'll start down on this end on the state side.
Sure. When we're talking about industry partners, just recently what comes to mind is we were working with Google on some specific grants to write culturally responsive CS lessons. And that's just, it's really important. And Dominic and I we kind of have two different approaches to it, which I think is pretty cool. He talks about a lot about what you teach. And what I'm a lot more interested in is how you teach, right? Like, how do kids learn the best, and trying to bring that into what we do in CS. And instead of the traditional sitting down, the pair programming, whatever it is, right, the sit and get, I need kids doing things that are culturally responsive in nature, things that have been found to get kids engaged and motivated to do things, like stand up, move around, projects that actually have you diverse ways of submitting your work, and we're grading it in a different way, just based a lot of collaborative assignments. And yes, sure, definitely giving them good context. That might be things and talking about social justice issues in the class, but more specifically, like how we're actually teaching this stuff and how we're expecting them to give us the work that we want to do. And I'm gonna pass it to Dominique because he's been doing some exceptional things in the space of what we teach, like with the barbershop computing thing. I was trying to bring that to Houston recently.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. So one thing that we've been doing, to Alan's point, so we have this barbershop computing initiative, and this is just a simple way to get more students of color involved. So what we actually do, we actually work with this organization, and they develop the modules. So on the modules, they learn about JavaScript and Python, so they have the different designs that all the kids have. But we actually then go into our CTE barbering programs and train those teachers on how to use them. So that's one thing we've been doing. But then with our community partners, I've been very intentional on our community partners, and we actually have quarterly meetings. And I tell them we just don't want the check when you are becoming a community partner as it relates to computer science, our initiative. How are you going to help us grow this initiative? So I want time. Are you coming into our classrooms, giving us more than just the check? Are you going to help us with our APCSP? Are you going to help us with our APCSA? What skill sets and assets can you bring into our meetings? So when we have our quarterly meetings with our different community partners, they're actually in the room with myself, our institutions of higher learning, some of our teachers, some of our superintendents. So then at the end of the year, when I do give my state of computer science report, it's really a collective and a collaborative effort of what we've done here in South Carolina.
Awesome. And Allison, just kind of at a high level from where you sit, what are you seeing with your partnerships with industry, or how do y'all infuse that into the work?
One of the things that I'm thinking about, based on what Alan was saying too, is I think we've seen a lot of industry partnerships with tech companies specifically supporting computer science education, and I think that's positive, and it's helped us to get policies passed at state levels. It's helped to support infrastructure like professional development and curriculum development. And I think we have to continue to engage with industry partners on two fronts. One, to ensure that we're not just it's not Band-Aid solutions for computer science education. We really need structural change in education more broadly. So how can industry partners help us support things like school funding, resources, teacher support and preparation on a more robust basis? And then two, we still haven't seen any progress, or relatively little progress, on diversity in the tech sector. So that is another place for us to continue to push. I think they're bought in on the concept that we need to prepare all young people for the future tech economy, because that ultimately benefits industry partners. And we also have to continue to push them to improve their diversity numbers.
And holding industry accountable for their hiring practices. And,
exactly.
Bridge programs, training programs, and how students of color, underrepresented, minorities, females have access to those opportunities, once they have had the learning and the training to go along with it. Okay, let's get some questions. You have a solid group of individuals with a lot of expertise in this space.
That's dope, bro.
So we'll open it up to you all.
Yeah, I want to hear more about it.
First table.
You need the mic. Oh.
Thank you. First and foremost, let me just commend the talent on this stage. Let's just give them another round of applause. It's always absolutely wonderful to see young people, young minorities, men and women just leading this work. So I want to direct this question to you yes. We have a program at one of our middle schools, and I'm here today with two of my middle school principals, and Mr. Evans was innovative enough to develop community partnerships, and one of the things he's doing is the kids are getting their hair cut and the girls are getting their hair done. I want to know, how can we gravitate over to something like what you're doing in South Carolina?
Yeah, probably the short answer would just be, after we've wrapped this up, I'll get your guys' contact information and we can make it happen.
I just wanted to say that when you have these programs in areas, one of the biggest, I guess, challenges to it is transportation. So I guess how would we? Is there any one of the programs that that has tried to solve that, or
So one of the things that we did this summer in South Carolina, we partnered with the Mark Cuban Foundation. So he has AI camps. And when I was talking about like intentionality of camps, so the reason why we chose that camp to that same thing. So if students do not have access to transportation on those weekends that the summer camp is happening, the Mark Cuban Foundation gives those kids lift passes. If the students don't even have like a tech device, as long as they indicate that on their application, they will have a tech device as well. And then of course meals are all provided as well. So just when I'm making a lot of other decisions on summer camps and where I'm putting the funding, it's almost to that same framework. So thinking about the kids in the rural areas that don't have transportation, can you provide lift passes? Thinking about, can we loan out computers? Thinking about the students that don't have internet, can we get hotspots and stuff like that? So making sure that we're doing that as well.
And with Career Catalyst, we're free and we're digital, so we're literally in every kid's pocket, if a school chooses, and we can bring professionals to you for in-person.
One last question. Hand up first. Yes.
Gather your data for your computer science program. And then you will have a varied amount of information and resources from the students themselves about what they want and how they want to be taught.
Yeah, that's definitely a very sound strategy. Getting feedback from the target audience, which is those kids, is a great way to go about it. And we've done that in many different programs. And also, I would add that is very helpful in grant writing. When you guys are thinking about being intentional about the grants you write and getting funding to do the programs that you want to do, get students to listen to student feedback. That always looks great on grant proposals to say, look, I talked to the kids and this is what they want. This is what they're interested in, and this is the way we're going to try to tackle those issues. So that's a great point to bring up, actually getting that student feedback.
Yeah. Hey, let's give this panel a hand, please. Let me give you all a hand for your involvement after lunch in this, so thank y'all. They will be around. Most of them will be at the reception this evening. You can find some of them as we break out. Also, Latoria Foy on our team, we have an economic mobility arm. So to the point that the questions you were asking about, how do you eliminate barriers for training for individuals? So a lot of resources around to help address some of those things that are occurring in the classroom, and especially when you start thinking about after school and how parents and also students get to the trainings there. So a lot of solutions there. So we will bring back up. Oh, we're going to get a photo with them, and then we're about to go back into sessions, right? All right.
we have two things, and then Evie will explain.
Okay, well, yeah. I'm done. Thank y'all. Y'all are good. Appreciate it.